In this session, we're going to have a look at processing and the problems that happens when you process food. So we always being mindful about whole foods and our whole body. We are going to have a look at actually what is a processed food, what do you lose or what's lost from the food when it's processed, and then have a look at some of the issues surrounding modern foods and new products on the market. So first of all, what is a processed food? Well, the definition is any food that's been altered in preparation for eating. So as a general rule, that's everything. Apart from if you're going to eat an apple or a banana or something like that. But as a general rule, when we're cooking and preparing food, we end up processing it. But there are different levels of processing, and this is what's quite important, and this is what we're going to have a look at today. And it's not just about what's been taken away, but it's also what's been added in as well. And this is particularly relevant to weight gain and increased intake of the big nutrients compared to the smaller nutrients, but that will make sense a bit later on. So first of all, let's have a look and see, what do you lose when you process food? So we've touched on this already, but you lose a lot of the vitamins, the minerals, essential oils, the phytonutrients, all these little magical nutrients of fibre, and you tend to lose a lot of the flavour as well. So basically, it's everything that is good for us. And this is, when I'm talking about processing here, this is particularly talking about when you're refining food. So when it's going through lots of different changes and split apart and put back into different levels. And so this is how it ends up being nutrient deficient as opposed to full of nutrients. And like I say, these refined foods, they have the biggest losses. So if you're going to eat a jammy dodger, don't know why I thought of that, just came into my mind. There's big nutrients, there's protein, fat and carbohydrates in there, but these other beneficial smaller nutrients, no, you won't find much in there. So this is a diagram of a whole grain. So this could be a whole grain piece of wheat or rice or something like that. And this is when it's being harvested. So you've got three areas of it. So you've got the brown outside area. So this is the bran. So this is really, really important. This is where the fibre lives, and the fibre, both soluble and insoluble fibre, and also a surprising amount of protein as well. But this is taken away because it can spoil the product. It doesn't last quite as long. It's not so easy to process, but also it's the value of it is known, because then you can buy it as a enhanced product, a price enhanced product. So you can buy oat bran or wheat bran or rice bran, as a health food. Well, why not just leave it in there? Then you've got down the bottom, you've got the germ. So this is where the oily part of it. So there's a surprising amount of fat in whole grains. And this is where your essential fatty acids are found, like your omega-3 fatty acids and some omega-6 as well, but also some vitamins and antioxidants. So we're going to cover antioxidants another day, but basically these are the little chemicals that actually support our body, functioning in our body. And then what you've got left, once you've taken both of those away, is you've just got the starchy endosperm. So this is the energy part. This is your carbohydrate. This is your quick release energy. This is your white flour, your white rice, that type of thing, which is good if you just need energy. There are people around the world where just need to get some energy coming in, who are starving. But it's pretty nutrient deficient, and so if this is all you eat, then it's not going to do you that much good. And the other thing about the germ, again, as well as you can buy wheat germ and stuff as a enhanced product, and a health food. It's these oils in there are very delicate, and then they can spoil the product, so they tend to be taken out again for longevity, and use in all sorts of different forms. And they white flour has always been kind of associated with affluence. In the past, it was only the rich people had the white flour. The poor people had all the germ, the wheat germ and the fibre and everything. But they discovered earlier in the 20th century, that it was problems if you just had white flour. It took out quite a lot of the nutrients. So they started adding in some of the B vitamins back in, and also some of the iron. But what this diagram shows you, it's a very busy diagram, but what it actually shows you is that if you have whole wheat, you get this incredible array of nutrients. So you're getting all these other vitamins, so vitamin E, which again is very strong antioxidant, but also really good for, it's like, I always imagine vitamin E as being the one that kind of keeps your joints going, it oils everything. Various other vitamins, vitamin K, which is essential for clotting and keeping inflammation down. It's also good for heart health. You've got other minerals. Look at all that fibre in there. And see how much protein is in there as well. It is quite surprising when you have 100% whole wheat. But that's lost. So much of that is lost when it's been refined. And when they enrich it, it's actually enriched with much more than you find in nature. And a lot of the time, more is not necessarily better. And so you end up with this product which is just automatically out of balance with nature and with how we evolved and what we were used to. Even though, so farming, humans have been farming for anywhere, well, let's say an average of about 8,000 years. So we have adapted to a lot of farmed products like wheat and oats and everything. But we're used to it in this better balance. And if right down at the bottom, you can see that this the calories. So once it's been refined, you actually end up with more calories than you would if you had whole wheat. And so this is going forward to this calorie dense rather than nutrient dense foods. This is a slide that I've put together. I use this on my Eat Well Live Well course, and just to try and show you again the comparison, particularly with oils. Now I'm going to do a whole section on oils, but once you've refined an oil, refined a product like sunflower seeds and turned it into an oil, you lose everything except for the fat. So refining sunflower oil, vegetable oil, a lot of rapeseed oils, it's a really chemical and highly, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's a really nasty process, basically, and it creates a lot of toxins and changes things completely. When you extract the oil from sunflower, you end up with fat, and you end up with a lot of fat. Whereas if you eat sunflower seeds, you still got quite a lot of calories because there's still quite a lot of fat in there, but look what else you get. You're still getting a lot of fat, but you've got carbohydrates, and in that you've got lots of fibre, you've got loads of protein, and then you've got other vitamins and minerals as well. And you can't eat that many sunflower seeds because of all the fibre, so it's filling you up. Now, I'm sure you're not actually going to eat sunflower oil by itself, although some people do use cold pressed sunflower oil as a salad dressing. But when you're eating fried and deep fried food, that oil is actually absorbed into the outer coating. So if you think about a batter on the fish and chips, and just quite how much oil has been absorbed into that, and that is what you're consuming, and you're literally consuming calories and nothing else. There's no nutrients in it whatsoever. So when you're eating whole food, you are getting everything. You're giving yourself the calories, but actually you're giving yourself much more nutrients. And this is why I keep talking about nutrient dense as opposed to calorie dense. So when we're processing food, so at the beginning it was, processed food is a food that has been changed in some way. And we actually have our own natural tools for processing, which is our jaw and our teeth. We, as I said before, we're designed for survival, and this is how we eat. But also, it's not just these mechanical tools that we have for processing. We have our saliva glands, and which is secreting digestive enzymes, and this is actually they start breaking down the food in your mouth before it's got anywhere else. So and even our brain is a natural tool for processing, because even when you start thinking about food, then it starts your salivary glands to start to secrete, and so you're actually starting this processing even before the food is in your mouth. And you're probably finding yourself that your tongue is now salivating, because even the thought of salivating makes you salivate. And these are our natural tools for processing. But obviously then we've got lots of kitchen tools as well. But this is quite key when we're thinking about eating whole foods, because when you start processing food and breaking things down, you're actually bypassing this first stage of natural processing. So even like when I'm making my soups, although they're great and they're a really good way of getting nutrients, in a lot of ways, by blending the soup, which I like quite a smooth soup, I'm taking away this first area of processing. And that's quite important, and I'll come on to that in a minute. So when it comes to processing, there are different levels, and I'm just going to show you a really simple illustration of this. So this is some plums. So this is actually 3 plums. By trying to get it all on the page in a nice way, you can't see all of them. But these are plums. These are plums from my garden in Portugal, and they're absolutely delicious. And I had some for breakfast one morning, and I put them on the worktop. So there's 3 plums, and I thought, 3 plums, that's actually quite a lot in one go, because they're quite big plums. But then when I cut them up, I thought, and put them in a bowl, actually it's not that much. It actually suddenly seemed much more reasonable than 3 whole plums. So I'd started the processing, I've chopped them up, and but that's okay, it's still whole, I haven't taken anything away, but that amount suddenly seems better. And I ate them, and they were delicious. But then if you think about the next level of processing with that, so plums dried turn into prunes, and some people love them, some people hate them. I really, really like prunes, and funnily enough, I only ever have them in hotels when we're away, because I never really think about eating them otherwise. But they're delicious because they're so sweet, and they're so sweet because they've been dehydrated. And so they're still a whole food, but actually by taking out the water, you've dehydrated it, so you've concentrated the amount of sugar in there, so they're much sweeter. But also because they're smaller again, you actually think, it's okay, I can have more than that. So whereas those 3 plums, I thought, that seems rather a lot, I would have twice as many, maybe more, of prunes, because they're smaller, they're sweeter, they're yummy, but I'm getting so much more sugar. Now I'm still getting all the fibre and everything in there, and some people use prunes on a regular basis to help their bowel action, which is a nice natural way of doing it, but there's loads of extra sugar in there. Now there's also lots of phytonutrients and minerals and other things, but it's still kind of this volume, so it's just to kind of help you think about that. Then you could go to another level, and then you have prune juice. Now, I know a lot of people use prune juice again to try and stimulate bowel actions, and it's marketed as being really healthy. But the problem with prune juice is the fact that you have absolutely no idea how many prunes or plums you're eating, and all the fiber's been taken away, and some of the other nutrients as well in this whole processing, because this is being pasteurized, and it's pretty nutrient dead, but it's full of lots and lots of sugar. So it's really easy to drink, but it's really easy to overeat, to have too much of it. And this is the problem. It all seems quite natural to us now, just to pick up a juice or to have something dried. But this is kind of like just the natural healthy stuff. How much more so when you're eating ready meals or takeaways, or just things that you don't know what's in it. So actually being aware of what you're eating is really key to be making sure that you're getting the right balance of nutrients. So I hope that makes sense as well. So I'm not saying you shouldn't eat plums. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat prunes. Not so much on the juice, and you'll see why in a minute. But it's just sort of getting your mind thinking in that way. So what about juice, smoothies, or juice? They're really popular. They're marketed and seen as a really healthy thing. And do you know what? I love a juice and I love a smoothie, but I don't have them very often. And the reason being is because you're really bypassing that first process. So if you're going to have a juice, then just have your veg only. That's a really great way of getting some really great nutrients, but of course you're losing all the fibre. And there is sugar in juice, but not as much as there is in fruit. So that's one key thing there, is if you're going for juice, if you're making your own juice and you feel, sometimes I feel the need to have a juice, I just, for whatever reason. Smoothies are better because you are keeping all the fibre in there. But again, when you have a smoothie, don't just use fruit, because you are getting a mega sugar hit. And the problem is the fact that is with the fibre. So a lot of the sugar is bound up in fibre. It is bound up in fibre. So by blending, you are bypassing our natural first step of food processing, which is our mouth and our jaw and our teeth. So when we eat fruit, when we bite into an apple, for an example, and you start chewing, you are breaking that down once it goes into your stomach and then into your intestines, those nutrients and the sugar and everything is released much more slowly because it's bound up in this fibre. But if you have already broken that down in a smoothie, then you're kind of bypassing that, and that sugar gets released much more quickly. And if you're just having a juice, then there isn't the fibre. The fibre's already been taken away. And so that's like, if you've got a lot of fruit in your juice, then it's like a mega sugar hit. So yes, it's great for nutrients, not so good for just flooding your body a bit too quickly with all that sugar. Like I say, it's bypassing this natural process, and our bodies are much happier when we do things like it's naturally. And you just have no idea how much you consume. So if you were going to make a juice, say for an example, you've got, let's say what we're going to have, a cucumber, kale and beetroot juice, and you've put an apple in it to make it palatable. If you actually put that on a plate and tried to eat it, you probably wouldn't manage to eat it all in one go, or it would take a very long time. And that's a good thing. It was going to take a long time because that's the natural way of doing it. But in the juice, you're just necking it. So again, I'm not saying don't have them. I'm just saying have them on occasion. Don't have them as a habit, because you end up having so much more than you realise. Okay. If you are going to have a smoothie or juice, then make your own rather than buy it, because at least when you make your own, then you know what's going in it, but also it's much fresher and you will get the nutritional benefits from it, all the vitamins and whatnot. So this is moving on to processed food or refined food products that we have now. So there's an explosion in vegan food products. It's great. People are much more aware. It's good for the environment, it's good for animals, but is it good for us? And pea protein is the latest one. It's the best, for various reasons, apparently. So, but what is it? So, peas are great. I love peas. I love green peas from the freezer. I love dried peas. And they're delicious. They're sweet. and I know they've got a lot of protein in them, and they've also got a lot of fibre. But that protein, once you extract the protein from a pea, then it's no longer a whole food, it is just protein. It's a reasonably healthy protein, but it is just a protein, it's one nutrient. So I looked into how you do this, and so first of all, when they do it, they take off the shell, so the outer cover, because that's where all the insoluble fibre is. They don't want that. And then the centre of the pea, which is kind of, when you've cooked it, it's a bit mushy, they mill that into a flour, and then it's separated into this soluble fibre, starch, and then the protein. And then they mix this flour in water or in some fluid. So I've discovered it could be water or a type of acid, something like that, some chemical. And they manage to separate the protein through this filtration and spinning, through all these different machines. And then they heat it to a really high point, and then turn it into something called a solubilized powder. And that is what the protein is. So, yeah. Is that natural? I think so. It's pretty far away from the original, from just eating peas. And the thing about this is the fact that when I found a little video on how they were doing stuff, and they said, oh, well, this is really good because it can be used in anything, and they're using it in all these different processed foods. So it's not just for vegan or plant-based foods. This is being added in all over the place. So there's extra protein being added into meals everywhere. So, and why is that a problem? Protein's good for us, isn't it? Well, again, I will go into it later on, but protein is for growth, and growth, you can look at growth in different ways. So it's okay when we need to grow. It's okay when our cells need to reproduce and we need to heal. It also makes us bigger, so helps us put on weight. And it also feeds for growth. It can feed growth, as in, any cells in our body which are not metabolizing. What's the word I'm thinking of? Anyway, turning into cancer cells. Now, plant proteins are much more gentle than animal proteins, but this more and more protein that we have actually creates quite a lot of problems in our body, and we'll look into that in a different thing, but we're just obsessed with it. But I just wanted to kind of illustrate that extracting a protein and having it added in to something is not very natural, highly refined, and there's not a lot of the goodness left in that, because peas, they have lots of other nutrients in it as well, but all you're ending up with is the protein. So, like I say, you get a lot of hidden extras. So this is where we move forward to these highly refined processed foods as being calorie dense. So we're looking at calorie density versus nutrient density. So to use an example, I've gone for good old Linda's. So, who doesn't love a Linda's vegetarian sausage? And this is what's in them. So it's kind of like spot the whole food in here. So it's got something that sounds particularly enticing as rehydrated textured soy protein. Then it's got oil. Then it's got some more protein, concentrated protein. And then it's got various preservatives and flavourings, and wheat, but not whole wheat, refined wheat. So we've already seen about how stuff's taken out of that and then added back in. It has to have a stabiliser. And then it's got ammonium carbonate. Well, that sounds really tasty, doesn't it? And all put together into a very tasty sausage. So there isn't anything whole in that. It's just a concoction of highly processed stuff. And look in there, you've also got some extra sugar in there as well. So it's not. So I'm not saying don't ever have a Linda's. My son would be devastated. But it's the amount that you have. So when we make these processed foods, kind of like the base of what we're eating, then it's you're just having so much more concentrated of the bulk nutrients and all these added in things that you don't need, that create inflammation in the body. So if, like, So, but if 90, 80, whatever percent of your time you're eating really, lovely fresh produce, the occasional Lindas isn't going to do you any harm. The problem is when that's what the base is, and this is again what we're trying to do, is trying to learn to maximize the amount of nutrient dense food that we're having as opposed to the calorie dense stuff. Now, interesting, they have actually improved this recipe because this vegetarian sausage used to have palm oil in it, and which obviously increases the saturated fat, and palm oil's just not a good thing anyway for the environment. So they have changed it, but it's when you look at it, you think, marvelous. And like I say, this is the point. So this is I love this cartoon. This is Tony, and this whole food diet is not donuts and things like that. It's actually real whole food, because otherwise, if you just have the processed stuff, then it doesn't benefit your body. Okay, so I've kind of covered that. Well, I have covered here all about processed food, but just to summarize, the best thing to do is to eat as close to the real thing as possible to gain all those nutritional benefits. That's where the whole food thing comes in. So, and if you let the main food processor be you, then you're going to get the most benefits. So by that I mean by you cooking the food and you chewing the food, okay? And when you're eating whole food, it makes you much more aware of how much you're eating. And then you manage to eat in a much more balanced way, and you get this slower nutrient release. And then when you eat refined products, it's just educate yourself, know what's in it, and have that as a minimal amount of your daily intake.